Meg Murray, a brilliant and awkward teenager, trudged through the halls of her school, her eyes scanning the crowded corridors with a mix of disdain and desperation. Her academic struggles were well documented, and her parents worried that she was falling behind. Her father, Dr. Andrew Murray, a renowned scientist, was no exception to the concerns. He had always been a supportive parent, but lately, his preoccupation with his work had left Meg feeling like she was walking on eggshells around him. As she navigated the crowded hallway, Meg's mind wandered to her father's cryptic message, scrawled on a piece of paper and hidden in his study. "The darkness is coming," it read. "I'll be back. Trust no one." Meg had tried to brush off the ominous words, but they lingered in her mind like a shadow. What did they mean? Was her father in trouble? And who could she trust? The more Meg thought about it, the more she felt a growing sense of unease. She had always known that her father was a bit of a maverick, but this was different. This was a sense of foreboding that seemed to seep into every corner of her life. She started to wonder if her father's disappearance was more than just a simple case of him being out of town on a research trip. As she walked, the weight of her father's message settled heavy on her shoulders, making her feel like she was walking blindfolded through a minefield. Meg's anxiety was compounded by the fact that her father had been working on a top-secret project, codenamed The Experiment. Rumors swirled that it was something to do with space and time travel, but Meg's father had always been tight-lipped about the details. She spotted her friends, Calvin and Charles Wallace, sitting at a table near the window and made her way over. They were a familiar trio, always seeming to find each other in the chaos of school life. Calvin, the athlete, was easy to spot with his athletic build and charming smile. Charles, on the other hand, was the enigmatic one, always lost in thought with a hint of mischief in his eyes. "Hey, Meg," Calvin said, as she slid into the empty chair beside him. "What's going on? You look like you've lost your last marble." Meg hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. She had always been the one to keep things light and carefree, but now, with her father's disappearance, she felt like she was drowning in a sea of uncertainty. "My dad's gone," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. Charles looked at her with a serious expression, his eyes narrowing in concern. "What do you mean? When did you last see him?" Meg's mind flashed back to the previous night, when her father had left for his mysterious research trip. "I don't know," she admitted, feeling a lump form in her throat. "He just left a note, saying he'd be back soon. But now I'm starting to worry." Calvin put a reassuring hand on her arm. "We'll figure it out, Meg. We'll find your dad." But as Meg looked at her friends, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. They were trying to reassure her, but she could see the concern etched on their faces. It was as if they knew something she didn't, something that made her father's disappearance even more sinister. After all, she had a mystery to solve, and a father to find. With a newfound sense of determination, Meg pushed her chair back and turned to her friends. "Let's get out of here," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "We have a mystery to solve." Calvin and Charles exchanged a look, then nodded in unison. "Game on," Calvin said, a grin spreading across his face. As they walked out of the cafeteria, Meg felt a sense of excitement building inside her. She was about to embark on a journey that would take her to the farthest reaches of the universe, and beyond. But for now, all she knew was that she had to find her father, and uncover the truth behind his mysterious disappearance. The darkness was coming, and Meg was ready to face it head-on. Meg trudged through the crowded corridors of her school, her eyes scanning the sea of unfamiliar faces with a mix of disdain and desperation. She was a brilliant student, but her academic struggles were well documented, and her parents worried that she was falling behind. Her father, Dr. Andrew Murray, a renowned scientist, was nowhere to be found, and Meg's anxiety was starting to get the better of her. As she walked, Meg's thoughts drifted back to the day her father disappeared. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a cryptic note and a faint sense of unease. The police had given up on the case, but Meg's mother was convinced that her husband was still out there, searching for something. Little did Meg know, her father's disappearance was only the beginning of an extraordinary adventure. As she turned a corner, she spotted a small, peculiar boy standing by his locker. He was no bigger than a fifth grader, but there was something about him that commanded attention. That's when Meg noticed it, a small, knowing smile playing on the boy's lips. "You're Meg Murray," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've been waiting for you." Meg's instincts told her to be wary, but there was something about the boy's intensity that put her at ease. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice firm but curious. "My name is Charles Wallace," he replied, his eyes sparkling with an otherworldly intelligence. "And I have a message from your father." Meg's heart skipped a beat. A message from her father? Could it be true? She felt a surge of hope, mixed with trepidation. What did it mean? And who was this mysterious boy? Charles Wallace led her to a small, unassuming cottage on the outskirts of the school grounds. The door creaked open, revealing a warm, golden light that seemed to envelop Meg in its radiance. Inside, she found three enigmatic beings, each one more extraordinary than the last. Mrs. Whatsit, a kind-eyed woman with a wild tangle of silver hair, greeted Meg with a warm smile. "Welcome, dear," she said, her voice like a gentle breeze on a summer day. "We've been expecting you." Next to Mrs. Whatsit stood Mrs. Who, a statuesque woman with a regal bearing and a mischievous glint in her eye. "Ah, Meg, you're just in time," she said, her voice dripping with drama. "We have a journey to embark upon, one that will take us to the farthest reaches of the universe." Mrs. Witch, the eldest of the trio, stood silent, her eyes fixed on Meg with an unblinking intensity. She was a woman of few words, but her presence was palpable, like a gentle hum in the background of Meg's mind. As Meg took in the three women, she felt a sense of awe wash over her. Who were these beings? And what did they mean by their cryptic words? But Charles Wallace seemed to know exactly what he was doing, and he led Meg deeper into the cottage, into a world of wonder and discovery. "You see, Meg," he explained, his voice low and urgent, "your father has been taken by an otherworldly force, one that threatens to destroy the fabric of our universe. We must find him, and we must do it quickly." Meg's mind reeled as she tried to process the enormity of Charles Wallace's words. Otherworldly force? Destroy the universe? It sounded like science fiction, but the look in Charles Wallace's eyes told her that it was all too real. "We have to go," he said, his voice firm. "We have to find your father, and we have to do it now." Meg hesitated, unsure of what lay ahead. But as she looked at Charles Wallace, she knew that she had no choice. Who, and Mrs. Witch, joined them, their presence a reminder that they were not alone in this quest. They were a team, a group of misfits brought together by fate to save the universe from an ancient evil. But as they journeyed deeper into the unknown, Meg couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. The stakes were higher than they ever imagined, and the danger was real. Would they be able to find Meg's father, or would they fall prey to the very force they sought to defeat? The journey ahead was fraught with peril, but Meg was ready. She had Charles Wallace by her side, and the three enigmatic women watching over her. Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: their journey would change them forever. And as they vanished into the cosmos, Meg's mother sat in her darkened living room, her eyes fixed on the phone. She had received a message, a cryptic message that seemed to hint at Meg's father's whereabouts. But as she listened to the words, she felt a sense of unease growing inside her. What did it mean? And where was her husband? The question swirled in her mind, but she knew that she had to wait. She had to trust in Meg, and in Charles Wallace. Together, they would find her husband, and they would bring him home. But as the minutes ticked by, Meg's mother couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The message had been clear: her husband was in danger, and they had to act fast. But where was Meg? And where was her husband? The uncertainty hung in the air, a palpable presence that seemed to suffocate Meg's mother. She knew that she had to trust in Meg, but she couldn't help but wonder, would it be enough? As they embarked on their journey through the cosmos, Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin found themselves hurtling through a swirling vortex of colors and lights. The wrinkle in time had transported them to a distant planet, one that was unlike anything they had ever seen. The air was thick with an otherworldly energy, and the ground beneath their feet seemed to vibrate with an alien power. Their guide, the enigmatic Mrs. Whatsit, led them through the winding paths of this strange world, pointing out wonders that defied explanation. They walked among towering crystal spires, their facets glinting like 1,000 tiny mirrors. They marveled at creatures that seemed to be made of pure light, their forms shifting and flowing like the surface of a liquid. As they journeyed deeper into this mystical realm, Meg began to realize that her own unique qualities made her the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. Her awkwardness, her struggles to fit in, these were not weaknesses, but strengths. For in a world where conformity was the norm, Meg's individuality was a beacon of hope. Mrs. Whatsit's eyes seemed to cloud over, as if she was gazing into a far-off distance. "It is the black thing," she whispered. "A force that feeds on the very fabric of space and time. It is the opposite of the universe, a void that seeks to consume all in its path." Calvin's eyes widened in horror. "We have to stop it," he said, his voice firm. Meg nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew that she was the only one who could do this. For in a world where conformity was the norm, Meg's individuality was the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe. As they journeyed on, the group encountered more and more bizarre creatures, each one more fantastical than the last. They walked among clouds of iridescent gas, their colors shifting and changing like the surface of a rainbow. They marveled at creatures that seemed to be made of pure energy, their forms shifting and flowing like the surface of a liquid. But as they delved deeper into the heart of this distant planet, the group began to realize that they were not alone. There were others out there, beings who were watching them, waiting for them to make their next move. Meg felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that they were being manipulated, that their journey was being guided by forces beyond their control. "What do you want from us?" Meg asked, her voice firm. Mrs. Whatsit's eyes seemed to cloud over, as if she was gazing into a far-off distance. "We want to show you the universe," she whispered, "to reveal to you the secrets of the cosmos. For you, Meg, are a key part of this journey. You are the one who can unlock the secrets of the universe." As they journeyed on, the group encountered more and more challenges, each one more daunting than the last. They navigated treacherous landscapes, their footing unsure on the shifting sands of time. They battled creatures that seemed to be made of pure darkness, their forms shifting and flowing like the surface of a liquid. But Meg refused to give up, for she knew that she was the only one who could do this. She was the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, and she was determined to see it through. As they journeyed on, the group encountered more and more bizarre creatures, each one more fantastical than the last. And yet, despite the challenges they faced, Meg began to realize that she was not alone. There were others out there, beings who were watching her, waiting for her to make her next move. She felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that they were being manipulated, that their journey was being guided by forces beyond their control. As they approached the heart of the distant planet, the group encountered a figure that seemed to be made of pure light. Its form shifted and flowed like the surface of a liquid, and Meg felt a shiver run down her spine as she realized that this was the being she had been searching for all along. "Who are you?" Meg asked, her voice firm. The being's form seemed to shift and flow, its colors changing like the surface of a rainbow. "I am the one who has been guiding you," it whispered. "I am the one who has been showing you the secrets of the universe." Meg's eyes widened in amazement. You're my father," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. The being's form seemed to shift and flow, its colors changing like the surface of a rainbow. "I am your father," it whispered, "and I am the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe." As Meg gazed into her father's eyes, she felt a sense of wonder and awe that she had never felt before. She knew that she had been given a great gift, a gift that would change her life forever. And as she journeyed on, the group encountered more and more challenges, each one more daunting than the last. But Meg refused to give up, for she knew that she was the only one who could do this. She was the key to unlocking the secrets of the universe, and she was determined to see it through. The dark force revealed as Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin ventured deeper into the unknown realm. Their senses were overwhelmed by an eerie, pulsating energy that seemed to seep from the very fabric of space itself. The air grew thick with an unsettling, pungent odor, like ozone on a stormy night, and the ground beneath their feet began to vibrate with an otherworldly power. "What is this place?" Meg asked, her voice barely above a whisper, as if she feared the very sound of her voice might shatter the fragile balance of the universe. Charles Wallace's eyes sparkled with an uncharacteristic intensity, and he took a step forward, as if drawn by an unseen force. "I think I know," he said, his voice trembling with a mix of excitement and trepidation. Calvin, ever the pragmatist, took a step back, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. "What are we dealing with, Charles?" he asked, his voice laced with a hint of concern. As they spoke, a dark, amorphous mass began to take shape before them, its edges blurring and shifting like a living thing. Meg felt a shiver run down her spine as the entity grew more defined, its presence filling the air with an unspeakable malevolence. Charles Wallace breathed, his eyes fixed on the dark form, is it. The dark force that has consumed the universe. Meg's mind reeled as she struggled to comprehend the magnitude of what they were facing. "It's a creature?" she asked, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her heart. Charles Wallace nodded, his eyes never leaving the dark force. "Not a creature," he corrected, "but a force, a power that feeds on the darkness within human hearts." As they watched, transfixed, the dark force began to take on a more defined shape, its form twisting and writhing like a living, serpentine creature. Meg felt a wave of revulsion wash over her, mixed with a growing sense of determination. "We have to stop it," she said, her voice firm, her eyes fixed on the dark force. Calvin nodded in agreement, his face set in a resolute expression. "But how?" he asked, his voice laced with a hint of doubt. Charles Wallace's small size and unique abilities made him a crucial ally in the battle against the dark force. His ability to perceive the universe in a way that transcended time and space gave him a perspective that no one else possessed. As they watched, transfixed, the dark force began to take on a more defined shape, its form twisting and writhing like a living, serpentine creature. Meg felt a wave of revulsion wash over her, mixed with a growing sense of determination. "We have to stop it," she said, her voice firm, her eyes fixed on the dark force. The stakes were escalating, and Meg and her friends knew that they had to confront the dark force if they wanted to save Meg's father and the world. But as they stood before the dark force, they couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. What lay ahead for them? Would they be able to overcome the dark force and save the universe, or would they succumb to its power? The outcome was far from certain, but one thing was clear: the fate of the universe hung in the balance. As the dark force loomed before them, its very presence seemed to fill the air with an unspeakable malevolence. Meg felt a wave of fear wash over her, mixed with a growing sense of determination. They had to act, and they had to act now. For the sake of the universe, they had to confront the dark force and put an end to its reign of terror. But as they stood before the dark force, they knew that they were in for the fight of their lives. The stakes were high, and the outcome was far from certain. Would they be able to overcome the dark force and save the universe, or would they succumb to its power? Only time would tell, but one thing was certain: the fate of the universe hung in the balance. As Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin ventured deeper into the unknown realm, they began to realize that the challenges they faced were not just physical, but also emotional and psychological. The eerie, pulsating energy that surrounded them seemed to seep into their very souls, testing their resolve and pushing them to their limits. But amidst the darkness, a spark of hope began to flicker within Meg. She remembered the words of her mother, Mrs. Murray, who had always encouraged her to find her own strength within. Meg had often felt like an outsider, a rebel against the world that seemed to see her as just a troubled teenager. But as she looked around at her companions, she realized that she was not alone. Charles Wallace, with his unshakable optimism and unwavering faith, was a beacon of light in the darkness. Calvin, with his quick wit and sharp intelligence, was a steady anchor that kept the group grounded. And then there was Meg herself, with her own unique blend of courage, compassion, and determination. As she reflected on her journey so far, Meg began to see that she had been playing down her own strengths for too long. She had always been told that she was not good enough, that she was too intelligent, too opinionated, or too stubborn. But as she looked within, Meg realized that these traits were not weaknesses, but rather the very qualities that made her strong. With newfound confidence, Meg took charge of the group, leading them through treacherous landscapes and unexpected challenges. She navigated the complex web of emotions that bound them together, using her intelligence and quick thinking to keep them on track. As they journeyed deeper into the unknown, Meg discovered that her love for her family was not just a feeling, but a powerful force that could overcome even the darkest of obstacles. Charles Wallace, too, found his own hidden strengths as they traveled together. His faith and optimism proved to be a source of inspiration, lifting the group's spirits and keeping them moving forward. Calvin, meanwhile, discovered a newfound appreciation for the beauty of the universe, marveling at the stars and planets that whizzed by outside their spaceship. As they relied on each other to overcome the obstacles ahead, the group's bond grew stronger. They began to see themselves not just as individuals, but as a team, working together towards a common goal. Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin learned to trust each other, to rely on each other's strengths, and to support each other's weaknesses. Their journey was not without its setbacks, of course. They faced moments of doubt and uncertainty, times when it seemed like the universe itself was conspiring against them. But through it all, Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin stuck together, using their unique blend of skills and strengths to overcome even the most daunting challenges. As they journeyed deeper into the heart of the unknown, Meg realized that she was not just fighting for her family, or for her friends, or even for herself. She was fighting for the very fabric of reality itself, for the chance to preserve the fragile balance of the universe. And in that moment, Meg knew that she had discovered something truly profound, her own hidden strength, and the power of love and friendship to overcome even the darkest of forces. But as they approached the next great challenge, a sense of unease began to creep over the group. What lay ahead? Would they be able to overcome the obstacles that awaited them? And what secrets lay hidden in the heart of the unknown? As Meg gazed out into the vast expanse of space, she knew that only time would tell. In the face of uncertainty, the group steeled themselves for what lay ahead, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. For in this journey through the unknown, Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin had discovered something truly remarkable, that together they were capable of overcoming even the most daunting challenges, and that their love and friendship were the greatest strengths of all. As they pressed on, the darkness began to recede, and a glimmer of light appeared on the horizon. It was a beacon of hope, a reminder that even in the most trying of times, there is always a way forward. And as Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin emerged into the light, they knew that they had truly found their own hidden strength, the strength of love, friendship, and the unbreakable bond that held them together. Their journey was far from over, of course, but for now, they stood together, united in their determination to overcome the challenges that lay ahead. And as they gazed out into the unknown, Meg knew that she had discovered something truly profound, that the greatest strength of all is not just individual, but collective, and that together they could overcome even the most daunting of obstacles. The unknown lay before them, a vast and uncharted territory that seemed to stretch on forever. But as Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin stood together, united in their determination, they knew that they were ready for whatever lay ahead. For in the face of uncertainty, they had discovered something truly remarkable, that together they were capable of overcoming even the most daunting challenges, and that their love and friendship were the greatest strengths of all. As Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin ventured deeper into the unknown realm, the landscape before them began to take on a surreal quality. They found themselves standing at the threshold of a desolate, mechanical world, where the once vibrant colors of the cosmos had given way to a dull, monotonous gray. The air was heavy with the scent of ozone, a stark contrast to the sweet, floral aromas of the planet they had left behind. This was Camazotz, a world under the iron-fisted control of IT, a dark force that had insinuated itself into every aspect of existence. The group's senses reeled as they navigated the eerie, grid-like streets, lined with towering buildings that seemed to stretch on forever. Every step they took felt like a gamble, as if they were walking on a tightrope, with the very fabric of reality threatening to snap beneath their feet. Meg's heart pounded in her chest as she gazed out at the endless expanse of the mechanical city. She felt a sense of disorientation, as if she had been dropped into a dream world, where the rules of reality no longer applied. Charles Wallace, ever the optimist, reached out and took her hand, his eyes shining with a fierce determination. "We can do this, Meg," he whispered. "We just have to be brave." But as they delved deeper into the heart of Camazotz, the group began to realize the true extent of its control. Every move they made was watched, every decision they took was monitored. The population of the planet was a sea of mindless drones, their faces blank and featureless, their eyes empty of any spark of individuality. It was as if they had been drained of their very souls, leaving behind only a hollow shell of what once was. Calvin, ever the scientist, couldn't help but wonder how IT had managed to exert such control over the planet. Was it some kind of advanced technology? A form of mind control? He pushed the questions aside, knowing that they didn't have the luxury of time to ponder the answers. They had to keep moving, had to keep pushing forward if they were to have any hope of reaching their goal. As they navigated the treacherous streets, the group encountered their first real challenge. A group of its minions, their faces twisted into grotesque parodies of humanity, emerged from the shadows, their eyes blazing with a malevolent intensity. Meg and her friends knew that they had to be quick, had to think on their feet if they were to outmaneuver their pursuers. The chase was on, with the group darting through the streets, their hearts pounding in their chests. They weaved in and out of alleys, their footsteps echoing off the cold, grey walls. Its minions were relentless, their pursuit driven by a cold, calculating logic. But Meg and her friends refused to give up, their determination burning bright as they pushed forward, fueled by a fierce desire to reach their goal. And yet, as they neared the heart of Camazotz, the group began to realize the true cost of their journey. They had left behind everything they had ever known, everything they had ever loved. They had put themselves at the mercy of a dark and malevolent force, a force that seemed determined to destroy them. The thought sent a shiver down Meg's spine, but she pushed it aside, knowing that they couldn't look back now. They had to keep moving forward, no matter what lay ahead. And as they pushed deeper into the heart of Camazotz, they knew that they were running out of time. The stakes were higher than ever before, and the risks they took were greater than ever before. But Meg and her friends refused to give up, their hearts burning with a fierce determination to reach their goal, no matter what the cost. As they navigated the treacherous streets, the group encountered a figure who seemed to embody the very essence of Camazotz. A young girl, her face blank and featureless, her eyes empty of any spark of individuality, approached them with a hesitant step. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried a message that sent shivers down Meg's spine. "I want to be me again," the girl whispered, her eyes pleading with Meg and her friends to understand. "I want to be alive again." The group exchanged a knowing glance, their hearts heavy with the weight of the girl's words. They knew that they had to act, had to do something to help this young girl, and countless others like her, who were trapped in the prison of its control. But as they stood there, frozen in a moment of indecision, the group realized that they were not alone. They were being watched, their every move monitored by its all-seeing eye. The stakes were higher than ever before, and the risks they took were greater than ever before. But Meg and her friends refused to give up, their hearts burning with a fierce determination to reach their goal, no matter what the cost. As they stood there, poised on the brink of a desperate gamble, the group knew that they had to take a leap of faith. They had to trust in themselves, in each other, and in the power of their own determination. And with a deep breath, they stepped forward, into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they ventured deeper into the heart of Camazotz, the air grew thick with an oppressive silence. It was as if the very fabric of space and time had been suffocated by the crushing weight of its presence. Meg, Charles Wallace, and Calvin stood at the threshold of the Dark Force's stronghold, their hearts pounding in unison like a drumbeat. The trio had faced countless challenges on their journey so far, but nothing could have prepared them for the terror that awaited them here. The landscape before them was a twisted, nightmarish realm, where buildings seemed to stretch on forever, their walls made of a cold, grey metal that seemed to absorb the last remnants of light. The once vibrant colors of the cosmos had given way to a dull, monotonous haze that clung to their skin like a shroud. Every step they took seemed to echo through the desolate streets, a haunting reminder that they were not alone in this forsaken place. Charles Wallace, ever the brave one, took the lead, his small frame moving with a purpose that belied his fear. Meg followed close behind, her eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of danger. Calvin brought up the rear, his eyes fixed on the ground, his mind racing with worst-case scenarios. Together, they pressed on, driven by a determination to reach the heart of Camazotz and put an end to its reign of terror. As they delved deeper into the heart of the dark force's stronghold, the silence grew thicker, until it felt like a physical presence that wrapped itself around them like a shroud. They walked for what felt like hours, their footsteps echoing off the cold, grey walls, until finally, they came face to face with IT in all its terrifying glory. IT was a massive, amorphous shape, its body a swirling vortex of darkness that seemed to pulse with a malevolent energy. Its very presence seemed to suck the air out of their lungs, leaving them gasping for breath. Meg felt a wave of fear wash over her, but she stood firm, her eyes locked on IT with a fierce determination. Charles Wallace, sensing her fear, reached out and took her hand, his small frame radiating a warmth and courage that inspired Meg to stand tall. But IT was not to be underestimated. It began to change, its shape shifting and contorting in ways that defied the laws of physics. It grew larger, its presence expanding until it seemed to fill the entire room. Meg felt herself shrinking, her sense of self diminishing until she was nothing more than a tiny, insignificant speck in the face of its overwhelming power. And yet, it was in this moment of utmost terror that Meg found her greatest strength. She remembered the words of her mother, the wise and loving Mrs. Murray, who had always told her that the greatest power lay not in physical strength, but in the human spirit. Meg realized that she and her friends were not just fighting against IT, they were fighting for their very souls. They were fighting for the right to be themselves, to be free, and to live their lives on their own terms. With this newfound understanding, Meg's fear gave way to a fierce determination. She stepped forward, her eyes locked on IT, and began to speak. "We will not be intimidated," she said, her voice steady and strong. "We will not be defeated. We will fight for our freedom, for our right to be ourselves, and for the right to live our lives as we see fit." Charles Wallace, sensing her courage, nodded in agreement. Together, they stepped forward, their hearts pounding in unison like a drumbeat. Calvin, inspired by their bravery, joined them, his eyes fixed on IT with a fierce determination. And as they stood together, united in their resolve, they felt a strange, tingling sensation that seemed to pulse through their very being. It was as if they were becoming one, their individual strengths and talents merging into a single, powerful force. And in that moment, they knew that they had the power to defeat IT, to shatter its hold on the universe, and to bring light and freedom to the dark and forsaken world of Camazotz. As they navigated the desolate landscape of Camazotz, Meg's friends realized that their time was running out. They had to find a way to escape, but its grip on the planet was tightening by the minute. Charles Wallace, still trapped in the grip of its dark energy, was becoming increasingly unstable. Meg, desperate to save her brother and her friends, knew she had to make a choice. With a deep breath, she turned to her companions and said, "I'll go back to the happy medium. I can try to find a way to break the hold IT has on Charles Wallace, Calvin and Murray exchanged worried glances, but Meg was resolute. She knew it was the only way to save her friends. As she stepped back into the vortex, Meg felt a searing pain course through her body. The happy medium's portal was closing, but she refused to let that stop her. With a fierce determination, she pushed forward, her vision blurring as she hurtled back to the portal. When she emerged on the other side, Meg was gasping for air. The happy medium's face was etched with concern. "Meg, what are you doing? You can't go back in there." But Meg was undeterred. She knew that she was the only one who could save her brother. With a newfound sense of purpose, Meg plunged back into the heart of Camazotz. She navigated the twisted tunnels and corridors, her heart pounding in her chest. Every step felt like a betrayal, every breath a reminder of the danger that lurked around every corner. But Meg refused to give up. As she approached the heart of IT, Meg felt the air grow thick with an otherworldly energy. The very fabric of space and time seemed to be distorting, warping under the pressure of its presence. Meg's eyes scanned the shadows, searching for any sign of her brother. And then she saw him. Charles Wallace was standing a few feet away, his eyes vacant and his skin pale. Meg's heart skipped a beat as she realized that she was too late. IT had already taken control of her brother's mind, erasing his individuality and leaving him a mere puppet. With a sob, Meg reached out to her brother. She knew that she had to act fast, or risk losing him forever. With a surge of adrenaline, she wrapped her arms around Charles Wallace, holding him close. And then, in a move that would change everything, Meg made the ultimate sacrifice. She poured all of her energy into a desperate bid to break the hold IT had on her brother's mind. The power of the Tesseract surged through her, but it was too late. Its grip was too strong, and Meg felt herself being pulled towards the darkness. As her vision began to fade, Meg realized that she had to let go. With a final, desperate cry, she released Charles Wallace from her grasp, feeling the energy of the Tesseract surge back into her body. But it was too late. Meg's body began to fade away, consumed by the very power she had unleashed. Her friends were left staring in horror as Meg's body disappeared into the shadows. They knew that they had to get out of there, fast, but they couldn't leave Meg behind. Calvin turned to Murray, his eyes pleading for a solution. "We have to get her back," he said, his voice shaking with emotion. Murray nodded, his face set in a determined expression. "We'll find a way," he promised. But for now, they had to escape Camazotz, leaving Meg's fate hanging in the balance. The stakes had never been higher, and the group knew that they had to find a way to rescue their friend, no matter what it took. As they made their way back through the portal, Meg's friends couldn't shake the feeling that they had left a piece of themselves behind. They knew that they would have to face the consequences of Meg's sacrifice, and find a way to rescue her before it was too late. The adventure was far from over, and the group was ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they stood on the threshold of their journey back to Earth, Charles Wallace's friends knew that they had to be brave and determined if they were to have any hope of rescuing Meg from the clutches of IT. The desolate landscape of Camazotz still lingered in their minds, a stark reminder of the darkness they had faced and the sacrifices they had made. But they couldn't let fear and doubt consume them. They had to hold on to the love and hope that had brought them together in the first place. "You know, Meg's love for her family and friends," Calvin said, his voice filled with conviction. "It's not just some sentimental feeling. It's a powerful force that can change the course of history." Charles Wallace's eyes narrowed as he thought about Meg's unwavering devotion to those she cared about. "You think it's strong enough to defeat IT?" he asked, his voice laced with skepticism. Calvin nodded. "Ido. We've seen how IT works. It feeds on fear and doubt, but it's also vulnerable to love and compassion. If we can tap into that, we might just have a chance to defeat it once and for all." As they discussed their plan, the three friends couldn't help but think about the journey they had been on so far. From the moment they had stepped through the wardrobe into the strange and wondrous world of the Murray's attic, they had been on a path that was full of twists and turns. They had encountered strange and magical creatures, faced incredible challenges, and made sacrifices that had tested their courage and their friendship. But through it all, they had held on to each other, and to the love and hope that had brought them together in the first place. And now, as they prepared to face their greatest challenge yet, they knew that they had to hold on to that love and hope more than ever. Because the truth was, they didn't know if they would succeed. They didn't know if they would be able to rescue Meg and defeat IT once and for all. But they did know one thing: they had to try. They had to hold on to the love and hope that had brought them together, and use it to fuel their journey. As they stood on the threshold of their final battle, the three friends knew that they were in this together, and that together they could conquer anything. They took a deep breath, steeled themselves for what lay ahead, and stepped forward into the unknown. "Are you ready?" Calvin asked, his voice loud and clear. Charles Wallace nodded, his eyes flashing with determination. "I was born ready." Meg's friend smiled, a fierce and determined glint in their eyes. They knew that they were in for the fight of their lives, but they also knew that they had each other, and that together they could overcome even the most daunting challenges. As they set off on their final journey, the three friends were filled with a sense of hope and determination. They knew that they were taking a risk, but they also knew that it was a risk worth taking. Because in the end, it wasn't just about saving Meg, it was about saving themselves and the world they lived in. They were taking a stand against its darkness, and for the love and hope that had brought them together. And they were doing it together, as friends, as a team. They were doing it because they knew that they were stronger together, and that together they could overcome anything. As they walked, the three friends felt a sense of purpose and determination that they had never felt before. They knew that they were on a mission to save the world, and they were ready to face whatever lay ahead. As they hurtled through the cosmos, Meg's friends couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. IT, the dark presence that had consumed Charles Wallace's mind, was growing stronger, its presence echoing through the stars. The battle for Meg's soul had begun, and Charles Wallace's friends knew they had to act fast. They navigated the treacherous landscape of Camazots, avoiding the brainwashed citizens who roamed the desolate streets. But with each step, Meg felt its grip tightening around her, its dark energy seeping into her soul. She was running out of time, and her friends knew it. "Charles Wallace, we have to get to Meg," Calvin urged, his voice laced with desperation. "We can't let IT take her." But Charles Wallace was frozen, his mind trapped in the grip of its dark energy. He was a pawn in a game he couldn't control, and Meg's fate hung in the balance. The group pressed on, their footsteps echoing through the empty streets. They encountered strange creatures, beings born from the darkness that lurked within Camazots. Each one was a manifestation of its power, a twisted reflection of the fear and despair that had consumed the planet. As they journeyed deeper into the heart of Camazots, Meg's friends stumbled upon a group of rebels, a small band of individuals who had managed to resist its influence. They were a ragtag group, armed with little more than hope and determination. But they were determined to fight back, to reclaim their planet from the grip of its darkness. "We can help you," one of the rebels said, her eyes shining with defiance. "We can help you rescue Meg." But Charles Wallace's friends knew it wouldn't be easy. Its power was too great, its grip too strong. They would have to find a way to outsmart it, to outmaneuver its defenses and reach Meg before it was too late. As they hatched their plan, Charles Wallace's friends knew that they were taking a risk. But they had no choice. They had to try, no matter the cost. For Meg's sake, for the sake of their friendship, they had to push forward, to fight against the darkness that threatened to consume them all. In a desperate bid to save Meg, Charles Wallace made a final sacrifice. He linked his own soul to Meg's, creating a bond that would allow him to communicate with her, to reach her even as its darkness closed in. It was a risk, a gamble that could cost him everything. But he was willing to take it, to give up his own chance at freedom in order to save his friend. As the darkness closed in, Meg felt a glimmer of hope. Charles Wallace was with her, his presence a beacon of light in the darkness. And together, they would face whatever lay ahead, no matter the cost. The battle for Meg's soul had begun, and Charles Wallace's friends were ready to fight. But little did they know, the greatest challenge was yet to come. As they journeyed through the cosmos, Meg's friends had never felt more lost and uncertain. The desolate landscape of Camazotz still lingered in their minds, a haunting reminder of the dangers that lay ahead. But despite the odds, they pressed on, driven by a fierce determination to rescue Meg from the clutches of IT. And then, in the midst of the vast and starry expanse, they saw it, a faint glow on the horizon, growing brighter with each passing moment. With hearts pounding and spirits soaring, they hurtled towards the light, their hopes and fears entwined in a single, desperate prayer. As they drew closer, the light coalesced into a figure, a being of warmth and love who reached out to them with open arms. Meg's friends gasped in shock, their minds reeling with the realization that the figure was none other than Meg herself, freed from its grasp and returned to them at last. The reunion was a blur of tears and laughter, of hugs and whispers, as Meg's friends poured out their hearts to her in a torrent of gratitude and love. But amidst the joy, a shadow loomed, a reminder that its power had taken its toll on Charles Wallace's fragile mind. As they gazed into his eyes, they saw the pain and the struggle, the battle that had raged within him as he fought to resist its insidious grasp. And in that moment, they understood the true nature of their journey, the sacrifices they had made, and the love that had sustained them through the darkest of times. As they stood there, holding each other close, Meg's friends realized that their journey had been more than just a quest to rescue a friend. It had been a journey of self-discovery, a journey of love and forgiveness, and a journey of the human spirit's capacity to persevere in the face of overwhelming adversity. In the silence that followed, they knew that they had been changed forever, their hearts and minds expanded by the experiences they had shared. They had seen the depths of its power, but they had also seen the depths of their own love and resilience. And as they stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, Meg's friends knew that they would carry this journey with them for the rest of their lives, a reminder of the power of love and friendship to overcome even the most daunting of challenges. As the group emerged from the swirling vortex of stars, they found themselves back on Earth, standing in front of Meg's home. The familiar sight of the old house, with its worn wooden boards and overgrown garden, was a welcome respite from the desolate landscapes they had traversed. Meg's father, Dr. Murray, stood waiting for them, his eyes shining with a mix of relief and exhaustion. Charles Wallace, still recovering from his ordeal with IT, stumbled forward, his eyes fixed on his friend. Meg rushed to his side, embracing him warmly, and the two friends shared a moment of quiet understanding. The tension in the air was palpable, as if the very universe was holding its breath in anticipation of what was to come. But IT was no more. Its dark presence had been vanquished, defeated by the combined power of Meg's love and the unwavering loyalty of her friends. The group had done the impossible, saving the world from the brink of destruction. As they stood there, bathed in the warm glow of triumph, they knew that they had truly accomplished something extraordinary. The celebration that followed was a joyous, chaotic affair, with hugs and laughter and tears streaming freely. Meg and Charles Wallace clung to each other, their bond stronger than ever, while Calvin and Mrs. Watts shared a moment of tender triumph. The universe, it seemed, was full of surprises, but in this moment, all was right with the world. As they stood there, basking in the afterglow of victory, Meg's father wrapped his arms around them, pulling them close. "You did it," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You saved my daughter, and you saved the world." The weight of those words sank deep into their hearts, a reminder of the incredible journey they had undertaken and the sacrifices they had made. For a moment, the group forgot about the dangers they had faced, the fears they had overcome, and the love that had sustained them. They forgot about the vortex of stars, the desolate landscapes, and the dark presence that had threatened to consume them all. All that mattered was the love they shared, the unity that had carried them through the darkest of times. And as they stood there, bathed in the warm light of love and triumph, they knew that they would carry this moment with them for the rest of their lives. As Meg and her friends stood before the old house, a sense of relief washed over them. The darkness of Camazotz, the treachery of IT, and the uncertainty of their journey seemed to fade away with the setting sun. They had done it. They had rescued Meg from the clutches of the dark force, and in doing so, had discovered the true power of love and friendship. Meg glanced over her friends, a newfound appreciation in her eyes. She thought back to the day they had first met, and how they had been brought together by circumstance. There was Calvin, the quiet and reserved genius who had become the group's de facto leader, Charles Wallace, the little boy with a heart of gold and a mind that could see beyond the veil of reality, and, of course, Meg herself, the rebellious and independent teenager who had found her true self in the midst of their incredible adventure. As they stood there, the three of them shared a moment of perfect understanding, a moment that spoke volumes without needing a single word. They had grown together, tested themselves against the fires of adversity, and emerged stronger and more resilient as a result. They had learned that love wasn't just a feeling, but a choice to put others before oneself, to sacrifice for the greater good, and to trust in the unknown. But as they basked in the glow of their triumph, Meg knew that there were new challenges ahead. The universe was a vast and mysterious place, full of unseen dangers and untold wonders. And she, Calvin, and Charles Wallace were just beginning to scratch the surface of its secrets. Meg thought back to the words of her friend, Mrs. Watts, who had first introduced her to the concept of tesseract travel. "The universe is a vast and wondrous place," she had said, "but it's also a place of great danger. You must be brave, Meg, and trust in the power of your own heart." Meg smiled to herself, feeling the weight of those words settle within her. She knew that she and her friends would face many more challenges in the days ahead, but she was ready. Armed with the strength of their bond, the power of their love, and the lessons they had learned on their incredible journey, they were ready to face whatever the universe had in store for them. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the old house in a warm and golden light, Meg felt a sense of hope and excitement wash over her. The future was bright, and she knew that she and her friends would be at the forefront of its discovery. And as they stood there, united and strong, Meg knew that nothing could ever break their bond, not even the vast expanse of space and time itself. In that moment, Meg felt a sense of peace and contentment wash over her. She knew that she had found her true home, not in the old house itself, but in the hearts of her friends. And as they stood together, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, Meg knew that they would face whatever the future held, together and as one. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the familiar scene, Charles Wallace stood before Meg's family, his eyes brimming with a mix of sadness and gratitude. The journey that had brought them together had been long and arduous, but in this instant, he knew that their bond would endure beyond the stars. Meg's father, Mr. Murray, placed a gentle hand on Charles's shoulder, a silent acknowledgement of the unbreakable connection they shared. "It's time for me to go," Charles said, his voice barely above a whisper, as if fearing the words themselves might shatter the fragile peace. Meg's eyes welled up with tears as she reached out, her fingers intertwining with Charles's in a final, desperate grasp. "But I'll always be with you, Meg," he whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You'll always carry a piece of me with you, just as I'll carry a piece of you within me." As the group began to bid their farewells, Meg's friends exchanged quiet glances, their faces etched with a mix of sadness and understanding. They knew that Charles's departure marked the end of an era, but also the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. Meg, in particular, felt a sense of loss, as if a part of her own identity was being torn away. Yet, even in the midst of this heartache, she couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude for the lessons Charles had imparted upon her. His unwavering courage, his unshakable conviction, and his unrelenting optimism had inspired her to confront the unknown, to face her fears, and to push beyond the boundaries of what was thought possible. As the night deepened, and the stars began to twinkle in the velvet expanse above, Meg's friends gathered around her, their faces bathed in the soft, golden light of the setting sun. They shared stories of Charles's bravery, of his unwavering loyalty, and of the unbreakable bond they had forged during their time together. They laughed and they cried, their voices mingling in a joyous, sorrowful symphony that echoed through the night air. In this moment, as the curtain closed on their adventure, Meg's friends knew that they would always carry the memories of their journey with them. They would cherish the lessons they had learned, the bonds they had forged, and the love they had shared. And as they stood together, bathed in the warm, golden light of the setting sun, they knew that they would always be a part of something greater than themselves, a community bound together by love, by courage, and by the unwavering conviction that they could overcome even the most seemingly insurmountable challenges. As Meg stood on the porch of her family's old home, the warm sunlight danced across her face, a gentle reminder of the incredible journey she'd shared with Charles Wallace and her friends. The memories came flooding back, the treacherous paths, the eerie landscapes, the moments of doubt and fear that had threatened to consume them. But most of all, Meg remembered the lessons she'd learned from Charles Wallace, the wisdom that had seeped into her soul like a gentle rain. "You don't have to be the strongest, the smartest, or the bravest," Charles had told her, his eyes sparkling with a quiet confidence. "All you need is to be true to yourself and to trust in the power of love." Meg's heart swelled with gratitude as she thought back on those words, the way they'd carried her through the darkest moments of their journey. As she gazed out at the familiar scene, Meg felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that the journey they'd shared had changed her life forever, that the experiences they'd had, the struggles they'd overcome, and the bonds they'd formed would stay with her always. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a mixture of sadness and gratitude that she'd shared so much with her friends. Meg's mind wandered back to the moment they'd first met, Charles Wallace's tiny frame and massive presence, his piercing gaze that seemed to see right through to her very soul. She remembered the way he'd smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and the way her heart had skipped a beat. It was a moment that had marked the beginning of an incredible adventure, one that would take her to the farthest reaches of the universe and back. As she stood there, lost in thought, the world around her began to fade away. The trees, the sky, the very air itself seemed to grow distant, as if Meg had stepped into a different realm altogether. It was a feeling she knew well, a reminder of the power of love and friendship to transcend even the most impossible of boundaries. In that instant, Meg knew that she'd carry the lessons of her journey with her always, that the memories, the laughter, and the tears would stay with her, a reminder of the incredible power of love to shape and transform us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a soft, golden light, Meg smiled, a sense of peace and contentment washing over her like a warm wave. She knew that she'd never be the same again, that the journey they'd shared would stay with her forever, a shining reminder of the incredible power of love, friendship, and the incredible journey they'd shared. As Meg stood on the porch of her family's old home, the warm sunlight danced across her face, a gentle reminder of the incredible journey she'd shared with Charles Wallace and her friends. The memories came flooding back, the treacherous paths, the eerie landscapes, the moments of doubt and fear that had threatened to consume them. But most of all, Meg remembered the lessons she'd learned from Charles Wallace, the wisdom that had seeped into her soul like a gentle rain. You don't have to be the strongest, the smartest, or the bravest, Charles had told her, his eyes sparkling with a quiet confidence. All you need is to be true to yourself and to trust in the power of love. Meg's heart swelled with gratitude as she thought back on those words, the way they'd carried her through the darkest moments of their journey. As she gazed out at the familiar scene, Meg felt a sense of peace settle over her. She knew that the journey they'd shared had changed her life forever, that the experiences they'd had, the struggles they'd overcome, and the bonds they'd formed would stay with her always. The thought sent a shiver down her spine, a mixture of sadness and gratitude that she'd shared so much with her friends. Meg's mind wandered back to the moment they'd first met, Charles Wallace's tiny frame and massive presence, his piercing gaze that seemed to see right through to her very soul. She remembered the way he'd smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners, and the way her heart had skipped a beat. It was a moment that had marked the beginning of an incredible adventure, one that would take her to the farthest reaches of the universe and back. As she stood there, lost in thought, the world around her began to fade away. The trees, the sky, the very air itself seemed to grow distant, as if Meg had stepped into a different realm altogether. It was a feeling she knew well, a reminder of the power of love and friendship to transcend even the most impossible of boundaries. In that instant, Meg knew that she'd carry the lessons of her journey with her always, that the memories, the laughter, and the tears would stay with her, a reminder of the incredible power of love to shape and transform us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a soft, golden light, Meg smiled, a sense of peace and contentment washing over her like a warm wave. She knew that she'd never be the same again, that the journey they'd shared would stay with her forever, a shining reminder of the incredible power of love, friendship, and the incredible journey they'd shared. In that instant, Meg knew that she'd carry the lessons of her journey with her always, that the memories, the laughter, and the tears would stay with her, a reminder of the incredible power of love to shape and transform us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a soft, golden light, Meg smiled, a sense of peace and contentment washing over her like a warm wave. She knew that she'd never be the same again, that the journey they'd shared would stay with her forever, a shining reminder of the incredible power of love, friendship, and the incredible journey